Welcome to lesson 05-3, flowers and trigonometry. Today we're going to be kind of making little flowers, but before we get started, we really got to start talking a little bit about trigonometry. Hopefully, again, if you're kind of going through this, that you've done some Algebra 2 and maybe some geometry. If you haven't, it's fine. We're going to teach you as you go along. You might have to kind of dive into some stuff a little more in detail on your own, but it'll still be fun. All right, let's get to it. All right, so the plan that we're going to build today is we're going to make a Scratch program that can draw a flower. And you're probably like, well, that seems really easy. Well, we're taking a little more of an interesting approach to this, and it's actually going to represent a trigonometric function, which is kind of cool. Now, in order to do this, we're going to need to learn how the flower is drawn. And then in order to do that, we got to review a little bit of trig, and we'll just go from there. So, the flower drawing program itself is we're going to start at the origin, and that's 0, 0. Especially when we're talking about Scratch, it's right in the center. It's in the 0. We're going to have the pen up because, we're drawing stuff. And then we're going to point the sprite in a direction. And we're going to use a variable for this. And this variable we're actually going to call angle. We're going to have the sprite move radius amount of steps. And that's starting to sound like really complicated, right? But if you think about it, like a sprite, it kind of, it goes around in all the circles. So then we're going to have it draw a single dot, and then we're going to have it change its angle by 1 and repeat those same six steps until it goes all the way around the circle 360 times. Now you're starting to see, this is getting a little more complicated, huh? All right, so one thing that you might be asking is, what is radius steps? Well, in order to do radius steps, we need to figure out the distance that we need to go from the center to the outside, like kind of the outside edge of that flower. And we have to do that for every one. We're kind of going to do a little bit of an outline around the flower right now. And so in order to figure that out, we have to do some trigonometry real quick. In case you forgot or anything like that. So in trigonometry an angle really is two rays, so two things that are pointing straight out from each other, that intersect at a vertex. And so you have a ray and it goes straight out, and they actually don't come back, and some people struggle with that. But a ray goes straight out. It's kind of like a laser or something like that. So we call these rays the sides of the triangle, the sides of the angle. So there's an angle, those are the two rays. On the left we have 45 degrees, on the right we have 90 degrees, on the bottom left we have 180, and on the bottom right we have 360. And there's obviously 360 just kind of regular degrees, and then you can start even doing decimals as you go into that. So you're starting to probably understand, it's getting kind of complicated. Now, you may remember, if you took trigonometry, especially in geometry, that strange kind of like saying, and I think where you are, it changes what it is, but the kind of way I was taught was SOHCAHTOA. And it was a way of remembering kind of all the parts that go with sine, cosine, and tangent. So sine being opposite over hypotenuse, cosine being adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent being opposite over adjacent. And have those kind of labeled right here. This is the triangle, if you think about it. This is the angle that we're working with. This angle could be up here as well. It would just flip these opposite and adjacent values. But for this angle right here, this is the opposite, this is the adjacent, and this is the hypotenuse. All right. Now, that's nice, and it's definitely helpful to know that, especially if we're talking about kind of Cartesian coordinates. But as we start getting into like the three-dimensional world, it's good for us to start kind of looking at polar coordinates as well. This is helpful because it's you can kind of think of it more of like a crane system, I guess is the best way to kind of think about it, where we have this radius and we have theta being the angle measurement, so how much do we turn, and then how far out do we go. And so it works, especially if you think of like a crane, if you think of that top-down perspective almost of it, of being able to turn 50 degrees to your left and then go out 10 feet and drop it right there. That's what we're effectively doing. So right here we have an example of polar coordinates. So we have theta, this is our angle. We have r, that's our radius. And then we have x and y. and you can probably start seeing this of like, hey, this is our, you know, if we're thinking kind of back here, angle, we got adjacent, opposite, hypotenuse. We have the same thing happening right here. Angle, adjacent, opposite, hypotenuse. But we're able to say the specific xy coordinate instead of trying to like kind of guesstimate it. And so the way that we can use this is the cosine of theta, so the cosine of the angle is equal to the value of x divided by the radius. And we can actually convert these from both sides, from polar to Cartesian and Cartesian to polar. But if we want to do this, we actually just get x is r, so the radius, times the cosine theta. And y equals r times the sine of theta. So let's go ahead and start just coding this a little bit. So let's switch over to Scratch. All right, let's see here. All right, so what I want to do is, oopsies, I got moved to the wrong screen. All right, so I'm gonna go grab when the green flag is clicked. I want to go to my looks and set my size. Let's make him really small. We still want to see what he's doing, but I don't want him to block everything. So let's go ahead and change this to 20%. All right. And then let's make him start at the origin. That's our initialization, right? And then let's see, I got the pen going. If your pen isn't showing, maybe you switched out right here, right? You're clicking on pen. All right, let's set the pen size to, 3, and then let's set the pen color to 0. Let's put our pen up, erase all, so then everything's all nice and clean. We're gonna show Scratch, and let's make some variables. Let's just delete that. Make a variable called r for radius and for number of petals, and angle for, well, the angle, right? All right, you need to pause now. I didn't actually set those. Set angle to 0, set n to 0. Let's see, r, n. All right. And n, r, and angle. We don't want our radius to be 0. Let's make it 50. Let's give it 5 of those, but we're always going to set our angle to 0. Okay. All right, now if you need a little extra time to get these put together, go ahead and pause this. All right. Now, we need to draw every single kind of like point all the way around this. And we talked about how a circle is 360 degrees. So we're going to go and grab in this control, repeat, and we're going to set it equal to 360. Now I want every single time I do this to make sure that I have my pen up. All right, so my pen up, and then I'm going to go to 0, 0. And then I'm going to point in a direction. In here, point in direction, and I'm going to use this angle feature, variable called angle, and then I need to move, and I need to move that kind of weird, angle that we just kind of, or not angle, but that radius that we were just talking about, and I can show you the right. Let's see here. Show for you right here. So this x equals r times cosine theta and y equals r times sine theta. We need those to work out for us. So let's jump back to Scratch. Luckily, and actually I don't want to move. I want a, oh yeah I do. All right. Let's see, let's move. Let's see here, we need a multiplication. Have to pay attention to my parentheses, right? Then I need my cosine. So this is going to be r. r times cosine of theta, which is going to be our number of petals times the angle. So I need a multiplication right here. So cosine of n times the angle. All right. And then once we get out there, let's go and put our block or a pen down. Oh, I need to put this in here. Put this right here. Put our pen down. And then we're going to change our angle by 1. So now if I push this button, if I did everything right, yeah. Going around a circle, and I got 5. Now what's interesting about this is that it's doing this twice. And you might be thinking that that might be wrong. Well, real quickly, let's go and change n to be 6 and run it again. Let's see what happens. It actually missed on that one, didn't it? So whenever we do an even number, we actually need all 360. Whenever we're doing an odd, we actually only need the 120. Now what's interesting is that we said n was 6, but if I count the number of petals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It did 2 times as many as we thought it was going to do. So it's just kind of something to pay attention to. And it's a little bit just how the math works out whenever we talk about like positives, negatives, and stuff like that. All right, so let's try doing something a little different. Let's take this out. Actually, no. We can do this even easier. Let's take this out and see what happens. Hey, look at that. And so what's really interesting about this is just showing that it's going through and it's actually hitting all of these outside spots and going from the middle. And so we have a nice filled in solid flower. All right. Yes. All right. So for those of you that are taking this for a class, let's see, I gotta scroll to it so it just pops up for you. Oops. Boop. I think I can scroll. Here we go. All right, so make some modifications to this program that we just built. So add a slider n to make it go from 1 to 20. Now remember that you need to remove the sets in order to make that work. Add a slider r to make it so it goes different sizes of flowers. Make sure it's going to fit on the screen. If you go off the screen, it actually gets all messed up because Scratch continues to move, but he's not going far enough, and so it sets some stuff weird. Use a slider for color so that you can make different colored flowers, and modify this so you have two procedures. Initialize, which should obviously initialize, and then flower, which is how you draw the flower. One optional one, especially if you're really doing well with this, is make several flowers that are randomly spaced. You can make this a slider, you can make this something else, but make sure you keep them small. Yeah, they can overlap, but we should be able to see them. As always, remember to include any comments that you're working on. Happy coding.